Welcome to Playing Above the Line, where we interview entrepreneurs, business owners, and community activists to get their thoughts and perspectives on leadership. Playing Above the Line is sponsored by Aviso Group, a business consulting and accounting firm focused on preparing clients for the future through innovation and positive growth. Welcome to Playing Above the Line. I'm Alan, your host, and our guest today is Aaron White, and he is a relationship manager with SmartBank based here in Fairhope. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Aaron? Okay, great. Well, thanks for joining us.
Appreciate the invite and get to sit here across the mic from you.
So let's just start off with this, and I really don't often start with this question, but we are today. So think back when you were, I don't know, let's just say 13, 14, 15 years old, early teenage years, when you thought of what a leader was and who leaders in your life were. Kind of what did you think back then? And then maybe compare that and contrast that to the way that your idea and thoughts on leadership have changed maybe over your career. Can you speak to that for a few minutes?
Sure. If I'm really thinking back, leadership as an example of a 13, 14-year-old is typically like a sports, something along sports. Those are going to be the predominant leadership roles that you have. You know, those qualities are really kind of more authoritative, drill focus, principle focus, and those are the way that they were to teach you and discipline, a lot of those things. And that's an interesting way to learn. Different studies of team environment can be attributed to being under kind of an authoritative leadership. And so that was kind of the primary early on. During that same time, probably in the late 90s, my father started a magazine, and he started it from scratch. And so that was a ultimate leader trying to lead our family and start a business that was an outdoors publication called Gulf Coast Outdoors. That was a different style of leadership because that was more inclusive, trying to build the team, grow something through activities, a much different kind of leadership role being one on a sports team. During that time, I guess I would have been in about that same age in the late 90s. So those were the two kind of conflicting leadership styles that I got to have experience with. Yeah.
Well, so let's talk about your dad for a minute. Was he a serial entrepreneur type person? I mean, starting a magazine is kind of a big deal. It's not easy. It's not something easy to do, I wouldn't think. What was the genesis of that, if you can think back and remember?
So he was always in the advertising business and print advertising. He worked for the local newspaper in Bay Minette, and so he worked through different acquisitions and mergers. He had the opportunity to go work somewhere else, and the way it ended up, you always hear people tell you, well, if you're going to do something that you love.
Right.
And so he always wanted to provide us an opportunity to go hunting and fishing, and so that was one of the things that he loved. And one night he just came with the idea, I know print, I love hunting, so let's do this. And there wasn't a magazine at that time. So it's kind of like the quintessential finding a niche and doing it. So that was where he came from.
Yeah, well, that gets back to, we talked about it maybe an episode or two ago that, especially in the entrepreneurial world, a lot of people have great ideas and have things that they think would work or things they're even passionate about, but really the key there is there's nothing unless action happens, right? And so it sounds like that's what your dad took that to the next step, really. Yeah. So what would you consider your leadership style to be today? We talked about sports, and a lot of us have experience being on sports teams and whatnot, and we kind of get leadership from that perspective. But what is your leadership philosophy evolved into?
Yeah, so I've had kind of an interesting progression of leadership, and it's actually kind of evolving even just today. So I told you, through sports, more of an authoritative kind of leadership style. I never was able to excel in sports. I wasn't on the opportunity to be on a whole lot of different teams. But when I went to college, went to Troy University, I studied basically management science. And so it was interesting to kind of learn that and learn the different theories of management. You got the theory X and the theory Y. When I came out of college, my personal idea was that I was going to be more of a theory Y leadership manager, be more participative management style and very inclusive and basically no authoritative influence. And so in my first job, especially my first opportunity to have responsibility, I used that philosophy and kind of implementing that in the team. But where I've seen, and even now, kind of making the whole loop, being in the career force since 2005, I feel like it's a season. So I feel like we would be limiting ourselves to say, well, I'm this kind of leader, I'm this kind of leader, because there's so many external circumstances that can influence what the optimal leadership style is at that time. Yeah. And so I started having this idea that, my boss, he might come in sometimes and he might be very authoritative. At first, it seems like a contradiction to what I would aspire to, yet at the same time, I deliver under that management style as well. And so I started thinking, wow, it might be in a season to where, although I may think this is the best thing, the actual results that are generated may be from a different management style. or the business life cycle that you're in. If you're in more of a defensive major market player, you may have more of an operations or authoritative kind of leadership style. Or if you're a small business trying to grow and trying to get market share, trying to get everyone to buy into an overall team growth, then you might need a different leadership style. So it's almost like I don't really have one that I think would be the best. It's just so many circumstances.
I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. What I'm getting from that is a good leader, and the more that I think about it now, I'm kind of agreeing with myself. A good leader can adapt. Number one, to the circumstance, I think is what you're saying. But number two, he's also got to adapt to the team that he or she is leading, right? Because like you said, different people react differently to different styles and whatnot, communication styles, et cetera. And so to be an effective leader, you have to be able to recognize that, number one. So there's some self-awareness there that I've talked about before. And you also have to be able to, once you recognize that, then kind of pivot, to use a word that we've all used a lot recently during the pandemic especially, and to be able to change your methods to fit the circumstance, I think is what you're saying.
Yes, sir.
So let's talk about your role as a relationship manager. It's got what I think is very important in the title. I think the relationship aspect of leadership is very important. So talk about the importance of relationships, and then maybe just give me the favorite part of what you do, because I know that you deal with the public a lot, I'm assuming. The title would kind of take that. So tell me what you like about what you do.
So probably the best thing that any good lender would say is getting to help their customers. Where I'm really able to see now, looking back over the years, and actually have been able to see customers, it's probably very similar to here at Aviso Group. Once you see people for a long period of time, you get to see their financials, you get to see their business plans, you get to see the things actually come to fruition that you may have been able to help with. The length of time really helps to me as I've become more and more appreciative of my career in banking. The longer I stay in it, the more cycles I get to see my customers go through. So that's really the cool thing. And the title relationship manager is something kind of common in banking. It's a twofold thing, and I think a lot of people haven't really thought about it. So there's one level to manage a relationship at the customer level. So the customer has to have a great experience, and so you're managing that relationship, managing those expectations, managing whatever needs they may have. The relationship manager also is responsible through the credit or risk function of the bank. And so your job is to also manage that relationship, which is the side of the bank that those are the keys to the vault. If you kind of look at what we do, the relationship manager has to go around and get people to ask them for money. And then what we have to do is go ask the guy with the key to open the vault. Yeah. And a lot of times that's hard, and especially depending on what cycle you're in or how your economic forecast may be. It may be easier to get the keys to the vault certain times than others. Right. In our company, we're going through a lot of growth and a lot of expansion. So if you're a great risk person, then you would basically want to tighten your risk requirements a little bit to mitigate that. Yeah. Well, I'm a lender, so I don't like it when that happens. But that's a necessary part of how when we're growing to make sure that banks don't overgrow and become reckless with their financials. Yeah. I get to see both sides, and so that's why I think relationship manager is a good analogy for what we do, is because it's a lot more than just being the guy that's all into everything and sponsoring everything, because it's even more positioning within the bank what the customer's expectations are. Yeah. When we go to seek approvals from the credit side, we might even actually tell them that we're going to expand. We're expecting additional loans from this customer. And so when we do that, and when our customers allow us the time and the years of working with them, that's really where things start getting good. Yeah.
Well, and from what you say, I mean, banking sounds a lot like accounting and what I do. I mean, not only are we numbers guys, but sometimes we're psychologists, sometimes we're counselors, sometimes we're mitigators. I mean, it's all the things that come into the personal interaction side of things. It's not just a bunch of numbers.
That's right.
Yeah. So what got you into banking? Is it something you've always wanted to do, or is what drew you to this career?
Well, I have a very interesting career path. Actually, out of college, I took a job at Shaw Industries in Andalusia. I was going to be a shift supervisor. Okay. And on the way home, driving through from Andalusia, came through Atmore, we had a family friend that worked at United Bank. And I literally walked in there, went to the third floor, and was fortunate enough to get to meet the people, and ultimately was given a management trainee job at United Bank, and I did not have to move to Andalusia. And so my first job was at the small bank in Silver Hill at United Bank. And I had a year or so of that before I was invigorated by entrepreneurship and went to work for my dad for several years. And so we did that business together for a while, and we were able to grow and go through all kinds of other challenges and changes. And something was calling me back into banking, and our family was better for that. So I was able to get back in, started at a entry-level banking job, and that's been about 11 years ago now.
I got you.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
What was your very first job that you had, maybe when you were in high school or college?
My very first job was washing cars at Chuck Stevens Automotive.
Okay.
That was an afternoon after-school job, so that was fun times.
You learn all kind of stuff from that first job. I mean, and a lot of times, I mean, just like yours, mine was working in a pulp mill of a paper mill in Bruton on the utility crew, and that's not something that's real glamorous, and it's a need that's being fulfilled. But that made me learn real quick that I was going to do something inside in the air conditioning and not outside in the hot.
Well, once my wife learned that was my first job, she's never washed a car. So I still get to take care of that part for our families. I kind of reminisce in that a lot of times because I'll wash our cars, and I see how busy all the car washes are, and I can't relate to it, but it's also my first job. So it's my nostalgic activity.
I got you. So think about when you're thinking of SmartBank, or maybe you can even go back and think about you and your dad when you had the business. When you were looking for somebody to come join that team, or when you're looking for somebody to come and join the team at SmartBank, what are some qualities that you're looking for in individuals that you think are maybe non-negotiables, things that people just have to be able to come and be a part of what you guys are doing?
I think one of the hardest things to do in the journey that I think that I'd be on is how do you interview and ask questions that would gauge someone's selfishness? Because ultimately you're looking for someone who has the attributes of wanting to put others first. And generally that's a great team dynamic. When you get several people, even if you just have a close to majority of people who are known for going above and beyond at the nature of helping someone, then ultimately the other technical things, the operational things, the other stuff all that stuff can usually be worked out. And so you have to work really hard to find a good team that gels together and wants to be committed. And that's where your leadership style has to continually evolve. And so it's a real challenge. I'm not saying that that's something that's very easy to do. I think that would be the biggest thing I'd be looking for, is to try to see someone who is almost over the top trying to help, because ultimately you're going to always get it done. Yeah. Especially when you're on tight deadlines and different things like that.
Yeah. Selflessness and team over self, that comes up over and over again. If you have somebody that's willing to do that, put the team first, I mean, 9 times out of 10 you're gonna find success for sure. Are you a big reader? Do you do a lot of reading, or a podcast guy?
Yeah, I'm getting into the podcast.
Okay.
So I've listened to several of your podcasts. I feel very honored to get the invite, but I don't. This sounds awful, but I want to be a reader. Like, I want to, but I'm just not. I try to read half of a lot of different books, and
well, that's fine. What do you do for fun when you're not banking?
I used to be a big-time saltwater fly fisherman, inshore fly fisherman. For many years, I was the guy that wanted to be on the pole, poling around various areas along the coast of Alabama. And so over the years, I've become more of a golfer. Okay. The dynamics worked out better for me, but I just really like being outside.
Gotcha.
I just like trying to be outside and do different things, and there's all different challenges, and this is another thing that we have to be as leaders of our families. I feel like we have to be nimble and ready to change for that, because certain times what I may want to do for fun is not necessarily the best thing for the rest of the family and what they want to do for fun. So that's a little bit of my work leadership thing trying to bleed over. So I fight that too sometimes, because you don't want anything to overdo. Yeah. And so I love to play golf. And so luckily I have a little boy, and right now he'll play or he'll ride. And so we're cool going and playing golf.
Right,
so
I gotcha. So kind of come out of COVID, and it's still a thing, but we're not limited in what we can do and that kind of thing as we have been in the past month. So what's something that you guys have started to be able to do that you really miss and you just couldn't wait to, once COVID is over, I'm going to do X, Y, Z? What have you guys started doing that you really kind of missed out on during quarantine and when we were having to stay close to home?
Ultimately, my life did not change for probably 98% of what my lifestyle was prior to COVID.
Okay.
There was maybe a week or so during the last, however long it's been since COVID that I actually didn't. Now, there's been a lot of other external changes that may have impacted certain things that we were able to do. The thing that I'm actually looking forward to the most is we loved going to the Bahamas for several years when our son was really young. And the most recent hurricanes, I think 2 years ago, that hit Abaco really bad. So we're looking forward to eventually getting to go to Abaco. And so that the COVID may have delayed that a little bit, but jobs and supply and demand with time has been more impactful to that than COVID. So I hope that doesn't come across as wrong or.
No, and I think that's, and to be honest, that's really kind of what I've heard more than not, especially in this part of the country. And I know that businesses, financial type folks, we were kind of insulated maybe from some of the furloughs and whatnot. And so we were able to keep our routines and go to work and that kind of thing for the most part. But no, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And being able to make the best of a situation that was awful for so many months, I think that's a great thing to do.
When the first round of PPP loans came out, that was a tremendous opportunity where banks, I guess other people may disagree, but that was an opportunity for banks to really kind of show that they weren't necessarily in things just for profit. Mm-hmm. We're trying to help, to kind of help a little bit of the maybe some of the negative PR we had from the last financial crisis. And so one thing that did happen is when that first wave of PPP loans came out, a lot of your bankers, community bankers, worked tremendous amounts of overtime and working, and their teams really had to pull together to get those access to funds and to work with accounting firms that worked really hard to put those things together. And so there was an intense amount of time where I think a lot of the country may have been shut down, where your financial institutions and everything were at like stage 4, about to be redlining. Yeah, that was probably one of the more interesting things. It was really good team for our team to grow together during that time, and it also became kind of socially acceptable to go play golf during the week once you got all those things taken care of, because golf was acceptable. Right. And so me and my boss were lucky enough to have several meetings on the course, and so that was good too.
We're doing it for COVID, man. You know what I'm saying? You had to keep everything outdoors and 6 feet apart and all that kind of stuff.
There was a very long justification list.
Yeah, you're just helping stem the spread of COVID. That's great. One more quick question. I'll let you go. And Carrie likes this question, so I want to ask it. So you go to whoever has karaoke around here. I'm not sure who makes Sherry's maybe when they have karaoke. Give me your karaoke song that you're singing by yourself, and then what you're singing, what your duet is.
Duet?
Yeah, and you can give me your partner if you want to. I'm more interested in the song than the partner, but I'll take both if you want to give me those.
Well, right now, to be honest, it is Another One Bites the Dust from Queen, and that's because my son is listening to that a lot, and we run around the house singing it a lot. So several times in the past 2 weeks, I have found myself singing Another One Bites the Dust.
He's got good taste in music. I like that.
Yeah, we like to rock on the way to school.
Good.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, as far as duet, it would have to be some kind of bluegrass like Merle Haggard and Willie Nelson or something like that. Some kind of duet like that would probably be cool.
I like that. I'll take that all day long. Yeah. Aaron, thank you so much. We have a great relationship with you guys at SmartBank, and so we appreciate you coming and for joining us today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes and Spotify. It definitely helps us in the ratings, and it also makes it easier for other folks to find the podcast. And as always, a big thank you to producer and editor Carrie Wolf. Playing Above the Line is sponsored by Avizo Group. If you want to know more about who we are and what we do, you can visit our website at avizogroup.com. That's AVIZO group.com. You can also check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thanks for listening.